You're listening to a 3CR podcast created in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Palestine Remembered, a usual breakdown of the week that was, and then later on we're going to be joined by a special guest that's going to call in. We're going to speak to her, Fernanda, who's part of the Free Palestine Melbourne group, and we're going to talk about the election and in particular the work of Free Palestine Melbourne and in and around the Wills campaign. In the first instance, though, let's talk about what's happening on the ground in Gaza. As we know, it's now 68 days, coming into the 69th day, since Israel completely locked down Gaza, not letting any food or water or medicine. The images I'm sure you are seeing on your phones are as distressing and heartbreaking as anything one could ever have imagined. You know, it's 580 days of this genocide, and if I was to put myself in a time machine to 500 days ago, perhaps day 80, so somewhere in end of November, early December, I imagined that based on everything we ever knew about how Israel might act, that there perhaps was days, weeks, maybe a month left, go through all of 24 and thinking how much more could they do, how much more inhumane could Israel be, and it's actually exposed itself for what it really is, what Zionism is, what, this Nakba 3.0 is, a complete and utter abrogation of the entire world's responsibility to hold power to account, aided by Western complicity, and in particular the media and ruling business class, etc. But that we could be sitting here 580 days later with daily reports of children being starved to death, deliberately starved to death. This is not a famine because of a years-long drought. This is not a famine because of some capitalist intervention has driven a loss of production and stolen food from workers. This is a deliberate starvation. Gaza has run out of baby formula. Infants who can't breastfeed because their mothers are malnourished have nothing to eat. And may the screams of these children who are starving haunt the enablers and the standers-by and the onlookers of this genocide well into their late years and into the hell that they will all occupy. That in that space, our country, our city, Melbourne, has decided the right thing to do is to prosecute one of our activists for a chant. As we know, Hash Tayeh has been charged, as well as 5 others, for allegedly saying all Zionists are terrorists. Now, I would suggest to everyone who attends our rallies not to say this. The police are obviously on a drive to criminalise us, to find ways to charge us. In the interim, I would suggest to people not to say, or not to chant all Zionists are terrorists. We've got so many other chants that we can chant. But in the midst of all of that happening in the world, what is our media concerned with? What is our police concerned with? Not complicity, not Australians serving in the genocide forces that are coming back on holidays. Not Australia sending weapons, not Australians, the media supporting it. We are concerned about this chant. I was on the ABC during the week and was asked, what my thoughts were. And Raph Epstein's come a long way. If you've ever listened to him, Raph Epstein's come a long way in the past decade. And I said to him, one of the things I said to him before we started anything was, my concern that he's created this. In the intro to me coming on, he spoke about Zionism and what Zionism meant. That Zionism was a belief in a Jewish homeland. It's some sort of mystical, mythological, beautiful thing to believe in. A Jewish homeland. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a Jewish homeland when you say a Jewish homeland. The challenge is when that Jewish homeland comes on your homeland. One thing we often forget, and it's never put into the back reel of any story, is that Palestine existed, Israel came to us. Not Judaism. Judaism was there. Israel came to us. Zionism, settler colonialism, hate came to us. And I said to him, well, before we start anything, Raf, we need to clarify what Zionism actually means. Zionism to a Palestinian means death. murder, rape, theft, genocide, as we see today. To somebody like me, it means my grandparents were killed, our house, our lands, our stock, our livelihood was stolen so that Israel could bloom, make the desert bloom. They took all of our stuff, killed my grandparents, and at the end of a bayonet, my father was forced from his land. Now, he turned left, and here I am in Australia. Had he turned right, I'm in Gaza. And it's that sliding door moment that propels and motivates people like me to continue to advocate, to use the privilege we have to speak out for what is happening in Gaza. That understanding everything that's happening, deliberate starvation, murder, the complete destruction and annihilation of Gaza, that we're concerned about a chant, and that the charge is that it's insulting. I've heard worse things shouted at me at the footy for barracking for the wrong team, let alone my DMs on Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, from the myriad of keyboard hate-filled Zionists. It's shameful. It's shameful. And Australia will look back on this time and say, we did the wrong thing. And we have allowed this to happen. We've allowed Gaza to happen, and we're seeing Gaza 2.0, God forbid, I hope not, going to be rolled out into Kashmir, another saw that the British Empire created, divide and conquer. We'll take India and turn it into East Pakistan and West Pakistan, and then Pakistan and Bangladesh and India, and we'll just leave a little sore. We'll leave this little sore here, Kashmir, just to bubble and ferment. Shameful, shameful. My friends, we're coming into Nakba week. It's the 77th anniversary of the loss of Palestine. As we know, 540 villages, 750,000 Palestinians ethnically cleansed. We're seeing Nakba 3 now in Gaza. Get out, get loud, get proud, disrupt, yell, shout, advocate, do whatever you can. There's never been a more pressing time. Never been a more pressing time. If you're a unionist, please Google Norway's largest union, 1 million members, overnight, overwhelmingly, almost unanimously, voted for a complete boycott of everything Israeli. Complete boycott. Last year's winner of Eurovision demanded that Israel not be there. Ireland is saying that they're not going to telecast Eurovision. We need to continue to ramp up the pressure. Israel, as it exists, does not belong amongst the countries of this earth. It cannot continue to exist this way. It only exists this way because of Western complicity. It isn't the global south. It's Western hegemonic power. It's predator capitalism. And it's time for us, the workers, to rise up and demand a change. After the break, we're going to be joined by Fernanda from Free Palestine Melbourne. We're going to talk all things election, and in particular Free Palestine Melbourne's work in the Wills campaign. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Rafif Ziada, and you're listening to 3CR, pro-Palestinian, happily proud radio.
May 18, we are marching from the river to the sea. So we're going to start out at the State Library. We're going to have a couple of speeches there, go down to Federation Square where we have the river, the Yarra River. And then from there, we're marching to St Kilda. It's a 6-kilometre march. The symbolism of that walk is in every Nakba, whether it's 48, 67 or now. The images you'll see is of Palestinians walking from destruction, walking from pain, walking from devastation, trying to find safety. But I'm really excited to be joined by Fernanda Trecenti, who's a member of Free Palestine Melbourne and one of the organisers of the Vote Palestine Wills campaign. Good morning, Fernanda.
Good morning, Nasser. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, Fernanda. Now, Fernanda, Free Palestine Melbourne has been actively involved in all of the protests to date throughout Melbourne, so thank you for all of that magnificent work. But tell us first about the origins of the Vote Palestine Wills campaign and what you were trying to achieve.
Free Palestine Melbourne had never been involved into a political campaign before. So this started back in June last year. We started discussing that we needed to broaden our activism, that just going to the streets was not enough. We had to attack from different sides. So Michael Sheikh took on that idea and wrote a great strategy paper, who was then brought to one of our meetings. Free Palestine Melbourne approved it. And then we started working. We created a small working group. Well, let me go back a bit. So once we decided to go into campaign, we realized that we had small resources. So we should focus in one seat. Wales was the obvious choice because we have there Zionist Peter Khalil, who often enough pretends to be pro-Palestine, even though all his actions say otherwise. And we also had two candidates there that are really pro-Palestine, Samantha Rednan and Sue Bolton. So we focused on that seat. This working group was created. We designed a flyer. The initial flyer focused on unmasking Peter Khalil, on showing his history of support to Israel, his lack of action during all the months of genocide. And that's how we started.
And I mean, I know there was a collective effort of, tens, perhaps hundreds, but you had a core group of sort of 10 or 15 people. And you did more than just hand out how to vote cards. You were engaging with the community, but you also had a panel.
Yes, we did. A lot of work, considering the small number of people that were involved. So this, after this initial card that I mentioned, talking about Peter Khalil, we had a forum, which I actually need to thank Rob Martin, because his work to interview Samantha Rednan and Iman Allah El-Zakun, Sue Bolton, was really remarkable, and also all the people that helped organize that forum. So that was really good. Iman Allah was fantastic, telling his Muslim community how important this election was, that the community shouldn't allow the government to buy their vote. And obviously they really, really went for that. I mean, Labor, like pork barreling in like an incredible amount in the area of Wales, and other very dirty tactics, in my opinion. So it was a very important moment, that forum. We leafleted on local mosques, Muslim schools. We did train stations. Then when it got closer to election, we actually then made the how to vote cards. And we realized that during the campaign that wasn't just about telling people how to vote, but we had to, there was a lot of doubt about what Australia can do about Palestine, because, of course, the government keeps saying, oh, we are a small player, we cannot do anything. So we made sure to add in our flyer all the things, or some of the things, like calling for a ceasefire, recognizing Palestine, cutting ties with Israel arms manufacturers, imposing sanctions. So we made sure to make that very clear. And we also made sure to explain how the preferential voting system works. Mm-hmm. Because in Wales, all the houses received flyers saying that if they didn't vote for Labor 1, they would be risking Dutton, which is really a way of basically lying about the preferential voting, and that was a Labor flyer.
The reality is, if you have a look at the entire nation, and we had somewhere between a 4 and 5% nationwide swing to Labor, on two-party preferences, if you go to Wales, it was a 10% swing against Peter Khalil, and when you consider just how much pork barreling, as you said, the money that was promised there, whether it's the $15 million for the sports centre and North Fitzroy Parklands, the
3.7 million for the Fitzroy Parklands, 4.5 million to the Falkland netball court. Even former Prime Minister Julia Gillard wrote a letter which was delivered to residents of Wales, reinforcing that misleading narrative that if you don't vote Labor 1, you are, as number one preference, you are risking Peter Dutton. So it was a strong, we faced it as strong battle, really.
I mean, when you consider, again, back to that two-party status, Peter Khalil had a 10% swing against him. So arguably, between you and the rest of the team, educating the populace about people who had a better position on Palestine, being Sam Ratnam and Sue Bolton, You were responsible for 15%, which is no small achievement, Fernanda. We're joined by Fernanda Trecenti from Free Palestine Melbourne. Tell us what you think the lessons you've learned for future campaigns, because I know I saw an article online about the Muslim Vote Matters, and they also had swings in Western Sydney, and there was a impact in West Melbourne, Footscray area with Hong, Queensland with a Palestinian woman, Rimah Naji. What are the learnings in any future campaigns?
You are absolutely correct, Nasser. We did have a 6.8 swing away from Peter Khalil towards our candidates, the candidates that support Palestine. But at the end of the day, despite the swing, we did lose. And that's what's in the headlines. No one is actually talking about this incredible swing that happened. Everyone, all the media, all the Labor politicians are just trying to link the Greens' electoral losses to their support for Palestinian human rights. And that's just extremely saddening and worrisome.
It is disturbing and it's worrying, but that's what politics is. And Labor is going to leverage everything they can to be in power. That's what politics is. What we should take away from it, though, is the fact the Greens vote didn't diminish. The vote for Palestinians, whether it's the Muslim vote or Muslim Vote Matters, or new people who came to the movement. I had tens of phone calls, messages, people I met in the streets that I've always voted Labor, I've always voted Liberal, I've always dummy voted. I'm going to vote for Palestine this election. It was a huge, huge win. What needs to be talked about and what they're not talking about is the absolute smashing of Peter Dutton. That is the actual story.
Which was like the most Zionist possible prime minister we would have ever had.
Indeed.
So there was a swing against the Zionist support, for sure. And I just want to, in this context, I want to highlight that Albanese's seat, Merrickville, there was more than 10% swing towards Greens and a 6.2% swing against Albanese. And it's remarkable that he can, in face of those numbers, he can stand up and say that, the Greens lost because of Palestine.
Yeah, indeed.
It's just unbelievable. But the lessons we learned, well, we learned that we can make a difference if we organize. But we also learned that we need to find a way to actually capture our supporters' imagination and get them to embrace other forms of activism besides going to the Sunday rallies. Because although they are great and important, they're not enough. We need to work on different areas, different sides, but pressure everywhere we can. And if 1% of the people that go to the rallies, had helped us because we were very short in people. Like we distributed close to 80,000 flyers, and I'm talking about really half a dozen people doing the really strong work here. There were others that would help here and there, but it was a very small core of people that were on the street distributing the flyers. And so I will leave this appeal here to our volunteers, to our supporters, that, there is a state election coming up. We might be out on the street again, and we would love for more support, for more hands to help us deliver flyers, to help us talk with people and explain how we can make a difference. That would be wonderful. And I also want to thank everyone that did support us, that did stand up for this. And it was just so, heartwarming to see those people, to make those friends, to have this experience. And even talking to people on the street. I mean, from time to time you get people crying when you talk about the genocide in Palestine. So people are not indifferent. Mm-hmm. Australians did not punish the Greens because they stood up for human rights.
Fernanda, thank you so very much, and thank you for all of your work.
Thank you, Nasser.
Thank you so much. That was Fernanda Trecenti from Free Palestine Melbourne and the Vote Palestine Wills campaign. And a big congratulations to all the people that were involved in all of that sterling effort. And even though the big win didn't happen, the little win is real, activating a community, the learnings. And I know that Free Palestine Melbourne won't go away. I know that the people that have been activated to vote better on Palestine and want more from their elected representatives on Palestine, that they're not going away and that we will continue. Now, a reminder, this week is Nakba week. Go to the APAN website. The APAN website, there's tons of stuff happening all over the continent. A really important learning is that with all the power of the Israel lobby, Peter Dutton did everything they wanted. Everything they wanted. He said no to a ceasefire. He said no to UNRWA. He said no to the ICC. He invited war criminal, fugitive Benjamin Netanyahu. These are the pre-nominals whenever you say Benjamin Netanyahu, fugitive war criminal. He even wanted to have a referendum to deport dual citizens. We know who he actually is talking about. He did everything the Israel lobby asked. Everything that the Israel lobby asked. And all he got was an update to his Wikipedia page saying he's the only opposition leader to lose his seat in a federal election. Well done, Dutton. The other learning is that Rupert Murdoch is alive long enough to witness his impotence in the land of his birth. If you'd have picked up the Israelian or the Australian, picked up the Herald Sun or the Daily Tally, watched Sky News, you would have been convinced in the past 19 months that Peter Dutton was the Messiah sent to save us all. He is on a mission from God and that we should vote for him. And with all of the bile and venom that those media outlets espoused, all for naught. The Australian population sacked Dutton. Didn't do everything we wanted, but let's be clear, doing everything the Israel lobby wants gets you nothing. That's the learning, Labor Party. That's the learning. Don't lean into that message of hate anymore. Don't lean into that message of division. The right thing to do is always the right thing, even if it's the hard thing. Make sure you get out this week and next week for Nakba. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, my friends, and it will be because of all of our work together. Thanks for listening. Share the podcast, tell your friends, and remember there's never been a better time for a free Palestine.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast. If you found it valuable, please consider donating or subscribing to support independent community radio. To find out more, go to 3cr.org.au.